Hey everyone. So I'm going to grace you with a nice long talk with a million slides. If I can find the clicker. There it is. So let's get going before we get behind. So I'm going to talk about the effect of decentralization on society. It's a big topic. Should be fun. So firstly, I'm a researcher at Ethereum. Let's not take any more time with me. I'm going to organize this talk kind of around 4 questions that you might have. And basically, they're not like, what is the effect of decentralization on society? There's, what's going on here? What might we do? What might we actually do with this thing? Should we care? And if so, what can we do about it? So let's go. I would love to have this screen show that, but this screen does. Is there any way to get that to happen? I don't know. I'll just stand over here. So, oh, great. Awesome. Perfect. So what's going on here in this crazy, crazy space? Probably a lot of you are here because you read this article. It's the trust machine. We're creating trust. The blockchain is going to create trust, right? And like that is kind of what's going on here. It's going to make trust by making it hard to abuse. It's trusted because they're hard to control. There's like 2 sides to this coin. Blockchains are trusted, blockchains are hard to control. Let me just go back. Blockchains are trusted, blockchains are hard to control. It's very important that you realize that you can't only pick one of these. They're both come together, and they're like the reason it creates trust is because it's hard to control. That's exactly how much trust it creates. Is exactly how hard it is to control. So applications running on the blockchain are trusted because the blockchain is trusted. And they're also hard to control for the same reason. But wait, how is it hard to control? Well, usually we have a person with a computer with an application, and we use their application on their computer. And if you just control the person, you can make them do stuff to their computer, and then you can control the application. So you control the person, you control the application. It's easy to control. The blockchain model, instead, applications have a blockchain which has computers which have people. We kind of invert that. So instead of trusting like one host computer, we have like many. And this is like quickly an aside, and we'll come right back and talk about a little bit of trustlessness. In public blockchains, people are like punished if they try to abuse the system, right? So it's specifically that we trust them not to shoot themselves in the foot, because if they were to screw with the application, then they would kind of be hurting themselves. And so it's hard to control because but usually being trustless means that like there is no trust involved because you just verify everything. In this kind of context, it means that we're only trusting that people want money and won't choose to lose it. So public blockchains are trustless because they punish bad behavior. I'm sorry, private blockchains. You're really not that much of a trust machine. You don't create that much trust. You aren't that hard to control. You aren't that trusted. Thought you should know that. You aren't trustless either, right? So basically, instead of someone with a computer with an application serving that application to you, we have applications with the blockchain with computers with people, and the blockchain is gonna cause these people to be punished if they were to influence their computers in a way to screw with the application. So it's hard to control because any individual people in this blockchain, they can't really screw with it without getting hurt by the blockchain. So in a sense, blockchain applications actually have agency because people in the network don't really control them, because if you were to try to control them, then you would get hurt by the blockchain. The blockchain doesn't like it when you try to screw with an application. So blockchains basically let us deploy secure autonomous applications. And so they're autonomous, they're hard to control, and that's why they're trusted. Just remember that. Don't forget it. So what might people be able to do with this? That's kind of the problem. This is the question that will give us a lens into what the possible effect of blockchains on society might be. We can secure the internet. You just heard me talk about this. So yes, we can replace ICANN, DNS, and certificate authorities. What does this mean? What would it mean to secure the internet? Well, for most businesses and individuals, it means we get to have privacy. We get to know that we're not being man-in-the-middle attacked. And that's good because people have like consumer protection things, and businesses have they need to worry about industrial espionage for all sorts of reasons. For law enforcement, though, it means that they're going to have a little bit of a harder time because they can't just man the middle anyone with like really easily in order to kind of track all their communications. So it makes society harder to control, but it also means that we have less cybersecurity problems. Now, this is a prediction that I feel very strongly about, and this I can say is kind of a strong hypothesis that blockchains will make the internet more secure and will lead to less cybersecurity problems. Probably that also means that society will be harder to control. What does that mean? It's complicated. So the security of private data, it's a consumer protection goal. But we can also do financial applications. You guys kind of know this. And this is all pretty exciting stuff, too. You have trusted financial applications that can't be controlled and who can actually control money directly. So we have this application with autonomy that actually controls funds. It can do what it wants with them because if any one of these computers who are running the application kind of tries to screw with it, they get screwed. And we can do title transfers. We can actually clear the title transfers. We can record them. And we can cause title transfers to happen due to triggering of events in smart contracts, or what I'm calling now applications. And we can do a lot of things with financial contracts because the barrier to entry, the cost of deploying these things is actually really small. We can have custodial arrangements like escrow and things like that. We can have derivatives, lots of derivatives. Any derivative you can imagine that you can program, you can just put it on there, and it'll be autonomous, and then it'll deliver the payment whenever someone. When it expires, or maybe it's an English option, you can call it any time, that kind of stuff. We can have trusted automated market making. This is pretty cool, right? To have a market maker that's automated and that you can actually trust instead of a market maker that's, probably getting the better end of the deal. Let's put it that way. We can do micropayments and microfinance. So this is actually a pretty exciting thing. There's a lot of things we can do with that. We can have transactions between programs. Between things. That's one of the bigger changes. Actually, programs can control funds just by controlling private keys, or they can actually, be these applications on blockchain that not only control funds but also, can be run on untrusted hardware. So all of this stuff is pretty cool. Now, this is pretty scary. We can make anonymous digital currency. It really seems like this is going to be possible. So it's scary. All this stuff is kind of scary, kind of exciting. There's a lot of possibilities, but there's also things that can happen that, by the same reason that we can produce trust, that are going to be hard to control. And we need to kind of understand that and to think about what it means to work in this space, to work on this technology, and how can we do that kind of responsibly, right? So what does all this financial application stuff mean to technology? So mean for society. We can create markets. We can maybe make markets that are guaranteed to be fair, that are auditable and automated. Maybe we can make markets that serve people who are currently excluded or exploited by existing markets. This is exciting stuff. People really think that this, it's important that we have markets that we can trust and that don't screw us when we participate in them, right? But probably people will also misdesign these contracts, or maybe just design malicious contracts and have markets that are automated, secure, but unfair and illegal. And that's something that we need to be kind of conscious of when we're building this technology, and thinking about what the effect of the technology might be on society. Probably people will be exploited in these markets too, just like they are in existing markets. But at least they'll behave in a predictable way, rather than in a way that's discriminatory in a much more case-by-case basis. And maybe machine finance will become a thing. That's pretty out there, but this is something that people play a lot around with, and it's definitely going to happen. What does this mean for society? I don't know. We can maybe figure it out. So it's kind of hard to say what's going to happen due to all this stuff. But we can also build governance tools. This is something that people are kind of excited about, especially in the Ethereum community. We can be sure that access to resources are only granted after some due process that like specifically, protects those resources from being like misused. We can make tools that like enforce logic and make sure that the processes actually comply with this kind of prescribed logic. So that could be really useful for making sure that some business process goes according to the rules that the business intends for them. We can create applications for coordinating stakeholders over negotiations. We can give them forums, reputation systems. We can make tools so that people can coordinate over like large groups, even when they don't have like enough trust to say, okay, you run our governance tool on your computer. We create new organizational structures. People are really excited about this too, because we'll be able to have organizational structures that are entirely administered by smart contracts, and organizational structures that maybe have like fewer barriers to entry, of like easier entry and exit of participants. But on the flip side, even though we'll be able to like trust that the organizational structures that we encode will be respected, we may not be able to control them, because that's the other side of this coin, right? It's trusted because it's hard to control. So what does this mean for society? Well, we might be able to build governance tools that can help us govern ourselves. And that would be really cool, especially if we're talking about, for networks of people working on the same problem on an international basis, for new organization types. And we can maybe govern ourselves at a lower cost. But it also might make society harder to govern, because we're going to have governance tools used by organizations that we might not like, but we can't stop them from doing that. So, at least it'll be hard. We'll have to do some social engineering, use some traditional police tactics rather than just shutting down their information systems. So now you might be wondering, if I'm predicting your questions correctly, should we care? I probably screwed up. You probably think we should care. Well, yeah. I think you should care. Probably because it might affect you, but also importantly, there's room for you to help shape the future of this ecosystem. Right? It's still early. These questions are still actually kind of undecided, even though we can kind of see what the nature of the technology is and what kinds of things might be possible. We don't know what kinds of things will actually happen, even though we can see what might be possible to like a certain point. So, if you're a lawyer, you might notice that there's legal challenges here. Probably a lot of them. So you can help. We want to be able to understand this in a legal context. If you're a regulator, you probably know that there's regulatory challenges here. You can probably just feel that from the hard to control part. And so you should totally be interested in this because of that. And we should have conversations and see what it'll take to meet our common goals, because we're really not trying to be irresponsible here. If you're a banker, there's financial applications, automated market making. That sounds great, doesn't it? And there's all the derivatives you can dream of. You just like let your quants loose. They'll probably have fun. If you're an investor, you might care. There's a lot of hype, but more importantly, there's going to be some people who are disintermediated, and so you might want to know actually how this will change the landscape of who is profitable in the future. If you're a technologist, this should give you a pretty big pretty big rush, because it's pretty crazy, and the problems are really exciting and interesting and interdisciplinary, right? If you're an academic, similarly, right? This has impacts on society. You can study this from so many different points of view. It's interdisciplinary. It is new. You can write papers. You could probably get grants. This is the thing for you. But if you're an individual, everyone is, you might notice that there's some trust that you wish you wouldn't have to rely on. There might be trusted service providers that you would like to have, but that just don't exist. And you might have systems of control that prevent you from doing what you want. So any of these things might make you interested in this kind of technology, right? So you might have things that you trust that you don't want to rely on, things that you would like to trust but that don't exist, or things that are trying to control you that you don't like. Again, because you got two sides of this coin. You can trust it because it's hard to control. You might also be asking, what can we do about it? What can we do about this stuff? I mean, you might think that it's kind of bad. So what can we do to stop it? Well, it's software. It's kind of hard to solve software because people will just copy it, and then they have different servers on different places. People will develop software. So maybe the better question is, how can we slow this down? Maybe this is all just too crazy, and we need to slow this down. Well, you can slow adoption. You can slow research and development by regulating the people involved. You could go to the application's users, and you could say, this is illegal. You're not allowed to do that, and persecute the users themselves. You could go to the developers. You could go to the people who deploy the applications. You could go to the people serving the blockchain platform. You could go to the people developing the platform itself. Maybe you can feel that this isn't all too comfortable, but here it gets even more uncomfortable. You can go to the researchers working on the theory and the architecture. And this is where I'm going to ask you to please don't do this. This is me. We can chat. We have good intentions, really. We do. But if you're really concerned that this is bad stuff, let's have some conversations. Let's talk about what we can do to be responsible in this space and get some of the benefits without some of the scary stuff about losing control. You can also try to reduce demand for technology. This is going to be a pretty radical section. By being more trusted. That's going to be tough. Or maybe building confidence. That's a bit easier. You can do that with PR. But you can also just be more trustworthy, right? That's tough, and I'd recommend this to you, to all of you, really. This is great, especially if you're a lawyer, a regulator, a banker, an academic. We should create trusted institutions that don't exist today, that people are looking to this technology to build, because if we have actually trusted parties, then we have something that we can actually control, but actually provide the service that people want to build. And so you'll reduce demand for the thing that you can't control, but by actually providing the trusted service that is attempting to provide. And here's the most contentious one, by actually repealing systems of control that people are trying to subvert using this technology. Tough one. Everyone just wants control. But if you do this, then the demand and push for this technology will be slowed. But, this is, again, scary stuff, right? But I've said it a couple of times. We really, really do want to use this responsibly. I've, had a little moral crisis trying to figure out, can we actually make this good for society? Or is this all just going to get out of control? I think we can do it responsibly. And if you want to do it responsibly, then maybe you think it's possible. Maybe you want to help. So how can you help? The main thing, the simple thing, is to contribute to educational efforts. Learn about it. Talk to people about it. Produce educational material. But the best thing you can do is actually contribute to research and development by, just investigating, finding use cases, doing research, and sharing it with your peers. I'm a little bad at that part. Funding research. This is important because you might not be able to do research, but you might be able to fund people who can do research, and that helps a lot. Play with the technology, right? Actually use it. That helps everyone figure out where the kind of rough points are. And the important thing is that if you want to help us do this well, we need to have conversations about kind of the ethics and consequences of building kind of blockchain technology, decentralized technology. So we need your help thinking about the blockchain in the context of society, right? We are at society. You guys are closer to society than we are. I'm just kind of sitting my computer in front of my computer all day, but you guys probably talk to people. We need your help, right? We need to understand how this plays into existing stuff, because we're pretty oblivious to the stuff that's out there. And we need your help to build healthy norms, right? We need to know, should we be talking to people about how we're going to decentralize them, or should we talk about how they could be more trusted first? Working together, I really believe that we can kind of help shape the future of this technology to be something that's actually quite good for the world and quite good for everyone involved. I think that like kind of the collaborative spirit of this conference, you know, can kind of help us understand each other's needs, understand each other's motivations, and help us shape the future in a way that is kind of ethical and responsible. So let's make it good. And thanks so much for listening to me. And I also want to thank the 3 wonderful women who put this conference together. Yeah, give them a round of applause. And so if you have any questions, I think we still have some time, right? Oh, no. Okay, great. Yeah, just leave it up. Please, just leave it up. Questions? I know there's got to be questions. Hey, V. Here, you just wait for the microphone.
Which one?
Vitalik. Oh, yeah.
Which one?
What's geographically closer by now?
Yeah.
So, can you give me an example of an instance where you think that we should not make the trade-off in favor of making things simultaneously more trusted and harder to control?
Yeah, I mean, because trusted in this sense means trusted to comply with a logic that's encoded into them, right? And if we just like encode the wrong logic or logic that isn't appropriate for a certain situation, then things can go quite badly. And you know, there are immoral uses of blockchains. I mean, for example, like extortion. I mean, Bitcoin is like the currency of extortion because you can extort over the internet, and they can send you money, and they can't shut down your bank account. You know, things like this could get worse, and we want to avoid these things. Yeah, the contract is trusted, but it's not a good thing just because it can be trusted to execute according to how it was programmed.
To make this sort of more specific, are any opportunities sort of much lower at the protocol level? So not so much, well, I don't like extortion, so let's just like not write extortion software, but more, let's not write this feature which might have benefits, but which also makes extortion much easier.
Yeah, so actually at the protocol level, it's very hard to make these decisions in a way that only affects the bad stuff, right? I mean, it's hard to provide a platform where people can write applications and say, you know, only applications that fit this framework can work. You know, if you have a blacklist, what you'll do is you'll end up having applications that fit that description that are actually fine. If you have a whitelist, then people won't be able to make applications that don't fit that description. So it's I mean, and certainly from like the point of view of like the elegance of the protocol specification, adding like a massive directory of stuff that behavior that isn't allowed if it's detected by the protocol and having everyone check everything. It's just like really ugly from a protocol point of view. And like, you know, these technical considerations do matter. We can't ignore kind of like the protocol's needs and like people's needs when we like design these things, right? It's super hard to even say that like to have a contract and say that this contract will only ever be used for good purposes. The same contract could be used for something good and something bad. And so there really isn't any kind of protocol level thing that we can do to just check whether the effect of some contract on society is something we would like. Right? So I definitely am not advocating making core protocol decisions in order to kind of say that only some contracts should be allowed or that some contracts should have special treatment. Yeah, that would be blasphemy for me.
Okay. Suppose that the first major global scale killer app of blockchain technology turned out to be either some extremely large scale evil DAO or potentially ISIS 2.0 or something similar. How would we as a community respond?
I mean, so I mean, that's exactly the conversation we should be having, right? I mean, what kind of response do we know that we have? At the moment, you know, if we really believe that these things are hard to control, then and we did a good job making the protocol, then we should be able to say, actually, there's not much that we can do. And that's, you know, it's not going to be a very pleasant thing to do. but the main thing that I think is really important is that people are aware of this and aware of these possibilities and kind of talk about it, and like that we establish norms, like, you know, don't do bad things, don't, you know, don't make contracts that are obviously going to be misused. You know, we need like to inspire basically a culture of like, you know, good people doing good things with blockchain technology. Greg?
I kind of wonder about your thoughts on the experiential aspect of relinquishing agency to these contracts, right? I mean, so on the one hand, I mean, I think we all have experience of 15 pages into an automated voice system. Press 1 for, right? And that's what it's going to be like to engage with some of these contracts. Exactly that. You're following a flow, and you have no choice but to engage. And so that's one end of the spectrum, right? And we all know what that feels like, right? At the other end of the spectrum, right? There's all the kind of weird, chaotic dynamics that come from algorithmic trading, right? I mean, that has not been particularly successful in a lot of ways, right? Because it's chaotic, and we can't predict it. We have topological transitivity on one side and the halting problem on the other, and we're kind of squeezed in the middle there. So on the one hand, we have this cold logic that we can't escape. On the other hand, we have these weird dynamics that we can't predict, that are going to be weird and surprising. So what does it feel like to relinquish our agency?
So it doesn't feel great to relinquish our agency, but it does feel good to deploy an agent that helps us. So, you know, I certainly don't want to be listening to, you know, options on a smart contract and then like having an inconvenient user experience. And I want to be using tools that are like, you know, somehow guaranteed to give the right kind of economic efficiency properties or market efficiency or whatever the goal is. But I definitely understand that it's hard to predict what programs will do, especially when they're interacting with each other. And so, you know, this is exactly the kind of stuff that we need to build norms around, that we need to have conversations about, so that the things that, and then the reason that it's really important and that we can actually affect change by having these conversations is that the things that are adopted will form network effects. I mean, market mechanisms are a great example of this, right? Like a market maker with few customers is going to be less successful and will attract fewer customers than one with more. So by creating network effects around good applications and attracting use cases to those, we can kind of help shape the outcome. And I think the way that we can do that is by kind of exploring the space of what could go wrong from the point of view of user experience, from the point of view of just like computer science, like, you know, can we predict what this contract will do? And yeah, I mean, it's difficult to predict the effect of blockchains on society. The only thing I'm really kind of confident in is that it'll help us secure the internet. But you know, I'm also optimistic, and I know that most of the people who are working in this space have some particular application in mind where people could benefit a lot from the provision of trust in a circumstance where now trust is being abused. And I think that it's really important, actually. You know, there's a reason The Economist suggested that the technology behind Bitcoin can change the world, is because, you know, there are lots of trust problems in the world, and there's lots of cases where trust is abused, and where removing the possibility for trust to be abused can improve people's lives in like a direct and meaningful way. So you know, even though I might have been a little bit bleak at times, I'm actually quite optimistic about our ability to make this turn out well. It's just going to take thought, responsibility, having conversations with people who know their context, and seeing how that fits in context with blockchain. So you know, there's no reason to be too afraid. Just have fun, and let's hang out and build cool stuff together, right?
Hello?
Yep.
So you can look at blockchain as potentially being an enabler for the next wave of globalization. And that's one of the really exciting things about the whole week of events that happened this week, because it's got a view as to how we can effectively regulate blockchain technologies and the exchange of value across borders, where there's obviously a lot of legal complexity and so on. And that's, if we can overcome those sort of hurdles, then in terms of societal impact, obviously that can have a really, really big impact in the developing world and so on, connecting people with value and so on. But purely on the societal side, if you take this discussion to its endpoint, then given enough complexity in these smart contracts and given enough time and experience at developing them and optimizing them and testing them and so on, can you see this sort of model, this decentralized model, as potentially being a disruptor to governments in the long term? Given that we've definitely talked about the collaborative aspects of the blockchain and governance by design, distributed voting systems and reputation systems and all these sort of things. If you actually follow it to its progression, I could at least theoretically envisage this as being a mechanism to organize people on a really grand scale. Do you think that the technology itself is equipped to do that? Putting aside the scalability debate, forget about the scalability debate, because
how did you know I was going to bring that up?
We've had enough probably for the day on that. But aside from that, do you think the technology is equipped to do that?
So there's two questions. One of them, equipped to enable collaboration and governance on a massive massive scale. I would certainly like to think so. Certainly, it's more equipped to do that if it is possible at all than a service provided on Google servers or Amazon servers or particular government servers. So if there is a way to kind of do global governance, then this kind of protocol that can be trusted by anyone but also can't be corrupted by anyone, because it's a very promising way to do it. Also, kind of along those lines, one of the reasons that we kind of fear people coordinating in very large organizations is that if those organizations end up having lots of people rely on them, and therefore they realize that they can kind of extract rents by the fact that people rely on them. But if that organization has business logic encoded in like something really reliable, then it could be like in the code that it will not seek rents after people start relying on it. And I think that could be really powerful for things such as a global governance kind of system. But your other part of your question was whether this could pose a challenge to existing governments. And I think that certainly the answer is yes, from the point of view of this is more inconvenient to regulate and control than other systems. Now, it's worth noting that since the kind of punishment that the blockchain enforces on malfeasors is economic, you can control it. There's just a price. There's so much money you need to spend, so much coordination you need to do in order to control blockchain. And so, any given blockchain today, probably any government, any significantly sized government could, if they had all the right information, pose a very significant threat to that system. So, even though it's inconvenient for them to shut it down, it doesn't mean that it's impossible. It might be that in the future these things become so massive and publicly used that no single government has the funds to undermine it like that. But that's a distant future. So at the moment, it's more like a thorn in the side of governments because it's harder to regulate, because you can't just send a court order out. You have to kind of also compensate people for the loss they incur due to the fact that they are running something that they don't know what it is, but you don't like it, right? Because it's important to realize that people who host these applications on a blockchain are not aware of what applications they're providing. They just have a computer online that they make sure is always online to serve these requests. So it's just inconvenient to regulate, and that is definitely a thorn in the side. But certainly, there's no question that large governments can control blockchains today. and I happen to love thinking about attack strategies. So if you're curious, come talk to me. Yeah. There's a question here.
With the widespread adoption of blockchain, do you think there will be fewer lawyers, fewer bankers, fewer accountants, fewer government employees, and fewer programmers?
I doubt there'll be fewer programmers. So basically, it's a kind of a difficult question because I don't know exactly what the job of a lawyer, a banker, et cetera, entails. There's going to be some of it that's automatable and some of it that isn't, right? So there's like definitely an extent to which like a contract sitting on one of these like blockchains it doesn't have access to the world, right? It will need like trusted people to provide it inputs to make judgments about things that happen outside of the kind of crypto sphere. So it's certainly not the case that all of the functions of lawyers, bankers, regulators, et cetera, will be filled by automated applications. But to figure out what part of their responsibilities can be automated and what parts can't, you need to have intimate familiarity with their professions. So I don't know, that'd be cool to work out, but I can't really tell you.
Yeah, we've got a question here.
So these are incredibly complex systems, especially if they're done well, right, in order to make them secure enough. But they hold an immense power, right, which means that a very limited number of people are able to envision a system that's both powerful enough and secure enough to use. Do you imagine that in and of itself is an issue of accessibility for people to architect their own systems? And if so, do you imagine a future where platforms are made easy enough for people to develop and architect their own systems based off of some solid sort of base level definitions?
I mean, yeah, you nailed it. I mean, it's really hard to kind of architect and create a blockchain, but if you have a blockchain as a platform, that platform could make it easy for you to build applications on top of the blockchain. And I mean, that is kind of the goal of the Ethereum project. We want to build like a decentralized platform, scalable one for decentralized applications or for, trusted applications that are hard to control. But not necessarily hard to control in the sense of, if you bake in the rules to the application and say, oh, okay, if these people vote this, then they decide what happens. That'll be easy to control. What's hard is to kind of violate the logic of the application. So yeah, I mean, the idea is to make platforms that people can use easily, rather than to have everyone make the platforms from scratch themselves. There's a question here.
So my question's around assuming large corporations, governments, and so on actually want to do things for the right reasons. Is the blockchain technology, private blockchain technology, a significant advance on the way, say, data is stored today? And is it worthwhile for them to set up these private blockchains in order to make whatever they do be more robust and more secure for end users?
So there's certainly an extent to which it is. So I mean, blockchains are like consensus protocols that have like a lot of digital signatures and hashing going on. And so there's like definitely an extent to which it makes it harder for like a hacker to get in and modify data unnoticed. So it definitely does add trust because it makes some things harder to control, but the network administrator can still control it. So there's definitely a value add, but it doesn't create trust on like a kind of societal level, right? Where if I don't trust the bank, then I'm not going to trust their private blockchain, right? If I don't trust the network administrator, I'm not going to trust the blockchain that they operate. But if there is no network administrator, then all of a sudden I can kind of trust the applications that are on there to execute according to the way they're specified.
Sure, but is there enough of a step in doing that today, not in 2 or 3 years' time, to make it worthwhile, in your opinion?
So surely a lot of these institutions have information security properties, and they should be doing anything they can to prevent compromise and breach and modification of their databases. Do I think that like having an internal blockchain will make your bank trusted? No, I think that you need to do like repeatedly treat your customers well in order to build trust.
Thank you.
We've got one over here.
Just a question on the resilience of the blockchain in its current state. if quantum or when quantum computing becomes a reality, particularly given that it would probably be in the hands of a few?
Sure. So the main thing in like these blockchains that is quantum, prone to like quantum attack is the signature schemes. But there are quantum-resistant signature schemes. They're just kind of sometimes they're one-time use. Sometimes there's much larger. I'm not an expert on quantum, but certainly quantum-resistant cryptography is like a field of research, and we would have to move to those primitives in that environment. Wait, you have to wait for a microphone, Greg.
Where is it?
Down here. We got a quantum expert on our hands.
Which one?
Right, yeah.
No, but, quantum computing makes a lot of the things that blockchain is. A lot of the computational complexity that goes into blockchains are obviated by quantum computing. So you don't necessarily need a consensus algorithm of the complexity that we're seeing today if you have certain kinds of transforms that are available to you.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's it's like
So I guess then the actual blockchain will need to run on quantum computers.
yeah. You just
Yeah. So if we had quantum computers for everyone, then we can make more efficient blockchains.
you just don't need them. You don't need them in the same way.
We'll see. So I guess that's all. Thanks so much for giving me extra time, Primavera, and thanks for all your time. Oh, do we have another? Oh. Sorry, we have another question.
No, not really.
No, we don't. Great. Let's stop away.